biological classification, otherwise known as taxonomy. You're going to notice a little bit of a difference between what you see in your textbook, which is old and should be replaced, and probably a lot of the resources you come across, which are just slightly updated and just modified a little bit, because that's what science does. As we progress, there are changes being made. So when you talk about classification, this idea of classification, most of us like order in our lives. I go to a supermarket, I don't expect to find fish with the broccoli. I tend to put socks with socks at home. I tend to put things that belong together based on the properties that they have. So in the world of life, biology, your textbook basically presents a 5-kingdom system. We have the kingdom fungi, kingdom animalia, kingdom plantae, the protists or protista, and then in your textbook it's called kingdom monera. Basically this is part of a system where we recognize 2 very large groups or domains, domain eukaryota and domain prokaryota. They're referring there, of course, to the 2 types of cells. You're a eukaryotic cell, or you're made up of millions of eukaryotic cells that have all membrane-bound organelles, whereas prokaryotes tend not to have membrane-bound organelles. Their nuclear material is disorganized in a nuclear region. We used to think of this as primarily bacteria, kingdom monera, and then, yea and behold, they've discovered that domain or prokaryota actually can be divided into 2 separate groups, the eubacteria and the archaebacteria. You know what? For now, you are fine with sticking with your textbook definition of 5 kingdoms. So we're going to give you a little bit of the history, a little bit of the reason for why we group things, and you're not expected to become an expert in each of these kingdoms, the properties and characteristics. The whole rest of the course is basically visiting each of these kingdoms and looking at these characteristics. So for now, it's just a general outline. You have already met the need for biodiversity classification. The point of that being, of course, that there is an awful lot of life on this planet. If scientists, biologists in particular, are going to discuss any of that life, we need a system where we can all communicate. There's a problem with communication if we are simply going to, deal with common names. So this looks to me like a ladybug, right? Right. But if you found one wandering in your garden, you probably would describe it as an orange bug, 13 spots, ladybug. Biologist, on the other hand, is probably going to give it its scientific name, Hippodamia convergens. This is the genus name, this is the species. So this biological name or scientific name helps you to distinguish this particular beetle from more than 250,000 kinds of other beetles in the earth. There's a whole lot of life on this planet, a lot of biodiversity, a lot of plants, a lot of animals, a lot of fungi. You get the picture. So, since there are millions of kinds of living things on Earth, biologists and yourself have a naming problem. You can't just go around describing all trees as big trees, or little trees, all flowers as red flowers or yellow flowers, all bugs as orange bugs or black bugs. Why not? It's a problem of communication. So I'll give you a little taste of what I mean by the communication problem. Listen carefully. See if you can understand. Do that again. That's Arabic. Let's move on to Hindi.
आपका स्नानघर कहाँ है? आपका शौचालय कहाँ है?
If you happen to be from Amsterdam, you might catch this one.
Waar is het toilet? Waar is het toilet?
How about one of our First Nations groups, the Chippewa? One more time in Chippewa. Okay, I'm thinking, given our school population, a few of you recognize the Korean. How about the Mandarin?
洗手间在哪里? 洗手间在哪里？
Okay, believe it or not, each of those languages was saying the same thing. They were all talking about the same problem, but I don't believe they would understand each other. The problem, of course, is we're not speaking the same language, and that, just in case you wondered what they're asking is, where's the bathroom? Having traveled in places like Japan, I found that when I was in high school, that was one of the first phrases I wanted to learn, kind of a necessity. Where is the washroom, please? So, just like this little example in these different languages, biology requires a system where we can actually make sure we're talking about the same organism, thus a scientific system called binomial nomenclature. Comes down to a simple example of, say, even common terms. We call this bird a robin, but are we talking about an American robin, Turdus migratorius, which has a length of about 1 centimeter, or are we talking about the European robin, 14 centimeters, a much different creature? Right. Classification is about giving every organism an agreed name. To avoid confusion, scientists worldwide use an international approach called binomial nomenclature. It just means two-name naming. And I mentioned Japan. Kind of cool to walk into one of their high schools and actually see a textbook where, even though I cannot recognize the Japanese characters, I certainly recognize the Linnaeus name, which of course is the chap who gave rise to this system of binomial nomenclature. And then, even more important, I recognize this universal system, originally based in Latin, on the genus name and the species name. So regardless of where I am, Japan, Timbuktu, wherever, I'm going to recognize that as a particular type of snail, I believe. So just in case you miss it on the robins, all robins are part of the same kingdom, Kingdom Animalia, belong to the phylum Chordata, class Aves, order Passeriformes. Only the scientific name, genus, and species focuses on the specific. So that is the specific name. The neat thing about this system of classification is that it is universal. The excerpt from a Japanese textbook, shown it right, gives you a good indication of the universal usage of Latin names for naming organisms. It's like the IUPAC naming in chemistry. You don't have to worry about calcium chloride being called something else in the Soviet Union because it's still calcium chloride. They still use the same system. So here's the rules for binomial nomenclature. Basically, the genus names begins with an uppercase capital letter and the species name with a lowercase small letter. So think of the example, Homo sapiens. Genus Homo, sapien is the species name. The genus name would start with a capital H. In typed or printed text, a binomial is shown in italics. After a binomial has been used once in a piece of text, it can be abbreviated to the initial letter of the genus name with a full species name. So instead of saying Homo sapiens every time, you can now put capital H, period, sapiens. Binomials are often chosen to honor a biologist or to describe a feature of the organism. Linnea borealis is named in honor of Carolus Linnaeus, the Swedish biologist who introduced the binomial system of nomenclature and named many plants and animals using it. There you go. How would you like a flower named after you? This is Linealis borealis. So the science of classification is called taxonomy. The word taxon is Greek and means things that are arranged into a group. More than one taxon are called taxa, so the plural is taxa. Species are arranged or classified into taxa. So we'll start with the most specific and work our way up to the kingdom. So species, take all the species that are similar and arrange them into groups called taxa. Every species is classified into a genus. Every genus or genera, plural again, are grouped into families. Families are grouped into orders, orders into classes, classes into phyla, phyla into kingdoms. So you get kind of the reverse order here. From the top, largest group would be the kingdom, then the phylum, the class, order, family, genus, and finally species. 7 groups within each kingdom. So these 7 taxa form a hierarchy, as each taxon includes taxa from the level below. Going up the hierarchy, the taxa include larger and larger number of species which share fewer and fewer features. So how are you going to remember that? Well, we're going to look at that in a second. Okay, the way I remember it, our little memory device is called mnemonics. King Peter called out for genuine scientists. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. So if you can remember a sentence like that, or if you don't like that one, try kids play chess on fine green silk. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Most general to most specific. Genus and species being the scientific name. It's almost better if you make up your own. How about kids play catch over Farmer Green's stable? Whatever works for you, you simply have to remember the order of those kingdoms. So, just to give you a feel for actual organisms, this is man's classification. Man, and again I include women in this classification. Kingdom, Animalia, phylum, Chordata, class, Mammalia, order, Primates, family, Homidae, and then finally the genus and species in italics, Homo sapiens. If you compare that with a oak tree, totally different kingdom, Plantae, different phylum. Oak trees don't have spinal cords. Angiosperms, the class Dicotyledonnae, order, family, genus, and species. You will notice that there are no taxa in that are similar to man. And that is not surprising because you are not an oak tree. Correct. Part of this scientific nomenclature of the binomial system is recognizing what a scientific name is. That's usually what you're asked for instance, on a biological drawing. The scientific name is simply the genus and the species. So an example would be Rana pipiens. First name here, the Rana, is the genus, Rana. And the genus is simply a group of species that share certain characteristics. The second name, the pipiens in this case, is simply referring to the particular species. This is an adjective. It could describe something about that particular organism, sounds it makes, its morphology, a whole lot of different things. It's got a pointy nose or something. So the type of question you might encounter is something like, which of the following pairs of organisms have more in common? Pair 1, Rana pipiens and Culex pipiens, or Rana pipiens and Rana gyrileo. Be careful. I'm going to just tell you here, because when you have similar genera, where these genuses are the same, you know that the organisms have very much in common. Otherwise, they wouldn't belong to the same genus. So, for instance, Rana pipiens, let me show you. Rana pipiens would be a frog, like so, the leopard frog, whereas Rana gyrileo is this particular frog. Again, they're both frogs, very similar, obviously, to each other. On the other hand, if you compare the other two species, Rana pipiens, we've already met, the leopard frog, but what the heck is Culex pipiens? Totally different genus, therefore totally different species, not related at all, a type of mosquito. So again, it's the genus that makes them have more in common. It's always a good idea to keep perspective on where you as Homo sapiens fit into this system of classification. So do consider the following. We are the species Homo sapiens, unattractive, smelly, pugnacious creatures that walk upright, grunting and bellowing. We are only one of many species that live on this planet, and we appear to be among the worst adapted. Our young are helpless for longer than the young of any other species. We have lost most of our hair, and what we have left is little protection against the cold. Our eyesight is weaker than that of most other species, and our sense of smell responds only to the strongest odors. If pursued, we can run only a very short distance, and that very slowly. We are remarkably unskilled at climbing trees or digging holes. We cannot live underwater, and we swim with less grace than almost any other animal if we swim at all. We are heavy and awkward and cannot fly. We can't even jump very high. We are singularly unequipped with weapons either for defense or for killing food. It is absolutely remarkable and utterly fascinating that our species has survived at all, and yet it has. Why? So I'll let you ponder that for a while. Given these characteristics, why has man as a species survived even though it appears that we are rather absolutely unremarkable?